Welcome back, teachers. Today I'm going to give you a very condensed, quick Reader's Digest version of Cornell Notes and how they've changed to the Cornell Way, which is an acronym, and each letter in Cornell Way stands for something. So we're going to talk about what stayed the same and what has changed. Typically, Cornell Notes in the past looked like this, and we can still use this model. It's perfectly fine. I have made a version for Vanston Avid elective students that is a little bit different, but this is still the basic one that Avid makes, and you are welcome to use it. Remember, this right side is sometimes lined like this, sometimes it's blank. For math, you can do it as graph paper or a grid, and the summary is at the bottom. An essential question goes at the top that relates to the topic, and I tell my students to get that from the lesson frame, because the lesson frame is essentially exactly what that needs to be without them really having to do much. On the left side of the Cornell Notes, they write high-level questions. Yes, it can also be topics, it can be vocabulary, it can be a main idea or a theme, but for the sake of the goal of Avid, the left side is mostly for high-level questions that use critical thinking skills from either Bloom's taxonomy or Costa's levels of thinking. Then on the right side, students can do notes in any form that works for them. I encourage them to do drawings, outlines, diagrams, graphs, using color and creativity as best as they can, because that helps with retention. Then you have your typical summary at the bottom that includes words and key phrases from up here, and they underline the key points. I tell them it needs to be at least 5 sentences. So here's the version that we're using in the Avid elective. This is just the top of the page zoomed in. This is what it looks like front and back. The main change is that I remind them what goes on the left side, and I wrote high-level questions really big because that's what I want to see more of on the left side, because that's what Avid wants to see more of. Oops, there's a typo there. That will be fixed before school starts. Then on the right side, it reminds them that they have some guidelines they have to follow. They need to include some pictures, charts, and diagrams. They should skip a line between ideas and topics, etc. This is going to be downloadable on my Weebly, so if you would like your own copy, it's there. Okay, so that's what it looks like. One of the differences is the summary is now on the back of the page only. I noticed students got very frustrated having to write 2 summaries, and it seemed to kind of waste time. So I tell the students when they do Cornell Notes they need to cover a full front page, a little onto the back, and then a summary at the bottom. Here is the Cornell Way in a very, very condensed version. There's a long, very detailed version of this on my Weebly if you want to take a look at it. But basically each letter stands for something. The C and the O is creating and organizing the notes, writing them out, making sure they follow the format, etc. The R, the N, and the E are considered note-making, where they go back and revise and do some reviewing of their notes. And this is one of the more important things that Avid is really emphasizing right now, going back and actually making those revisions, noting the key ideas, and then exchanging ideas by collaborating with someone else is really the key to the retention part of Cornell Notes. So this is something we're going to actually practice as a staff. Finally, you have note interacting, which is linking the learning by creating a summary and using it as a learning tool to study from. So these L's kind of come into place as you're doing the C-O-R-N-E part of the Cornell Way. Finally, we have note reflecting. This is where the teacher comes in to give some written feedback, and then the student addresses it and reflects on their own learning by making some changes to the notes and studying the notes. Here's an example, and it's kind of hard to see, so I'll kind of point out some key parts. These are from last year where students made Cornell Notes on their own paper. Notice that this student wrote the notes in pencil and then went back and highlighted important stuff, and then I went through and underlined and checked off some stuff and gave some basic feedback, and then they went back again and continued studying them and highlighted in a different color. That's kind of the process that Avid is emphasizing now. Instead of just making Cornell Notes, shoving them in a binder somewhere and never looking at them again. It's something that you're supposed to create, revisit, revise, get feedback from, and reflect on. What I like about what the student did is their high-level questions are really strong. This second one here says, justify why radiant energy is important in the photosynthesis process. This one over here says, illustrate and label where radiant energy and water are observed. Here's a math example. This question over here on the left is a little long, but still, he did a really good job of drawing diagrams. He only went back with one color, so he did not go back a second time, but you can see I didn't grade it. So this was before I graded it, and he went back a second time. His summary is nice and long, but he should probably have some things highlighted, underlined, or circled. So what's the whole point of this? I'll remind you that there's the forgetting curve. Once you learn something, you're likely, after about 3 days, to only go down to 60% or less of remembering what you learned. But by revisiting your notes for just 5 minutes a day, that curve goes up, and it's possible to retain every single thing you learned that day just by reviewing your notes for about 5 minutes a day for a week. If you have any questions, please give me an email or visit my Weebly. Thank you.